Clayton Kershaw told us he'd be back with the Dodgers. The Dodgers told us Clayton Kershaw would be back with the Dodgers. Doesn't change the fact that we're excited that Clayton Kershaw is back with the Dodgers. Let's talk about it live on Locked On Dodgers.
You are Locked On Dodgers, your daily Los Angeles Dodgers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Dodger fans, this is Locked On Dodgers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks to our everydayers for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen, and thanks to those of you who are with us live here on Tuesday evening. Remember, this show is free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube simply by searching for Locked On Dodgers, so please subscribe wherever you're watching or listening right now. If this is your first time with us, my name is Jeff Snyder. That guy next to me is my co-host, Vince Samperio. Vince and I are both lifelong Dodger fans, just like most of you. We've also both spent time covering the Dodgers in the press box and the locker room, so we bring you the smart fans perspective on our boys in blue every weekday morning. And as you know, Vince, my favorite of all the boys in blue, in fact, my favorite all time of all the boys in blue is Clayton Kershaw. Obviously, the version of Clayton Kershaw that currently exists is a little bit different than the one that existed when he was winning the Cy Young Award every year. But Clayton Kershaw, still a fan favorite, a Jeff favorite, and still a pretty darn effective pitcher when he's healthy. And we found out for sure when he showed up at spring training on Tuesday that he will be back with the Dodgers in 2025 yet again for his 18th season.
Yeah, they weren't going to be able to keep Clayton Kershaw away from Camelback Ranch. And, you know, especially with the energy around the team right now and everything else, it's a great thing to see. And it's a lot different, at least online, a lot different reaction than maybe there was last year. Last year when they, brought back Kershaw, it was in maybe the most exciting thing for everyone based on his, performance in Game 1 of the NLDS the year before. But this one's a lot different. It's all excitement. It's all happiness. And especially considering, you don't know what to expect out of Kershaw, but we're glad he's back. And that he's basically said that he'll only pitch for the Dodgers if he pitches in the big leagues. From all we know, Andrew Friedman has always said that, Kershaw is basically a Dodger until he retires. And now we get to hopefully see him pitch this year a decent amount and get that 3,000th strikeout.
Yeah, and I think there's some realism going on, realistic expectations on the part of the fans and on the part of Kershaw that, obviously Kershaw still believes that he can be a very effective major league pitcher. And we've seen that even last year. Like if you look at his raw numbers in his 7 starts, he had a 4.50 ERA. But most of that was from the last 2 starts. His ERA was 2.63 after his first 5 starts, including 3 straight really good starts. And then a clunker against the Rays, and then that 1 inning stint against the D-backs where he left with the toe injury. You have to assume that the toe was bothering him for a while. He didn't seem super surprised when he left with that injury. And so, it's impossible really for us to know how much the toe injury contributed to that clunker against the Rays. And, Dave Roberts said it's something he's been dealing with for years. But, there's different extents of dealing with it. But the fact is, in 2023, yeah, Kershaw had the really bad game in the postseason, but in 24 starts, he had a 2.46 ERA in 2023. Like he was still a totally different pitcher, like I said, than he was back when he won the MVP award, but still getting a fair share of strikeouts, not walking very many guys, giving up too many home runs. That's kind of been the main characteristic of since he went from being Clayton Kershaw, best pitcher in the world, to Clayton Kershaw, really good pitcher. The big difference was more home runs allowed. But when you go into this season, 2025, with the expectation of, all right, when you're healthy, we'll find starts for you. You'll be our 5th or 6th starter. You'll maybe do some piggybacking. We'll see. But kind of for most of his career, every time that he's been on the roster, it's kind of been expected, okay, you got to carry this team. And the last couple of years, not as much. This year, not at all. With Tyler Glasnow, Blake Snell, Yoshinobu Yamamoto, Roki Sasaki, Shohei Ohtani. There are so many guys who can help carry this that Kershaw can just come, be himself, be a legend, pitch when he's available, and like you said, hopefully put up some decent performances, get the personal milestones he's looking for, get a third World Series ring, hopefully get to actually contribute to it this year, and maybe then right off into the sunset.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Last year after the season when they kind of asked him, like, are you going to come back? And he said, yeah, like, why not? I just got this new shoulder. Why not, use it to my advantage? And now he's getting the surgery to clean up other things. Like, there's a possibility where Kershaw can, be very, very effective as a starting pitcher and, be not that anyone's expecting him to be bad, but, come in and be legitimate. And, he's gotten some things cleaned up. And, the arm is not obviously what it used to be in terms of velocity and everything else, but that hasn't really affected how effective he's been able to pitch. And, to think if all this stuff, if every year he can just either not worry about getting into the spring in the best shape of his life, or maybe clean up whatever else is kind of bothering him, that could, affect the way he pitches, maybe he sticks around 2-3 more years and just kind of like, maybe not so much Roger Clemens specifically at the end of his career, but like kind of like that where, you're around because you like being around the guys and your kids are getting older, but, they're old enough to kind of realize and you can have your routine down. Or it could be, he gets his 3,000 strikeout, the Dodgers win the World Series again, and then Clayton Kershaw retires after this year.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting to see. He obviously loves playing baseball, loves being part of the team, all of that, loves the Dodgers organization. And who knows, maybe when he gets to 3,000 strikeouts, then he starts saying, well, but now I'm 18 seasons in. Do I want to do 20 years? 20 years is kind of a round number. And 20 years with the same team is something you hardly ever see. Haven't seen it. I can't think of who the last one would have been. I would guess Cal Ripken was the last guy to play a full career of at least 20 seasons with the same team. I'm probably forgetting somebody obvious, but but everybody you think of, like Tom Glavine finished his career with the Mets. All these big stars who you associate with one team, they all go somewhere else at the end. And that might be something that ends up being meaningful to Kershaw. Maybe he wants, his youngest son to get old enough to remember it, to have some memories of dad as a ball player. Who knows what's going to be important to him. But like you said, he has declared he is a Dodger for life. The Dodgers have declared he's a Dodger for life. I'm interested to see what this contract looks like when they finalize it. I had thought they might wait to finalize Kike until Kershaw is ready, so they could first, get. I guess we should mention the Dodgers made the Kike signing official on Tuesday. They put Gavin Stone on the 60-day IL to make room for Kike. I thought they might put Stone on the 60-day, sign Kershaw, and then transfer Kershaw to the 60-day to make room for Kike, but ultimately they have enough 60-day IL options, and there's no real reason why why Kershaw needs to be one of them. So at some point in the next couple of days, it'll be made official. We'll find out what the terms are, how much he's getting paid. I assume it's a pretty low number, and he is just here to be a legend and to get his innings in when he can and hopefully win another World Series.
Yeah, it looks like Jeter and Biggio are the last two with at least 20 seasons.
Oh, yeah. Remember Derek Jeter? I remember that guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of possibilities for Kershaw. I mean, we've talked about him potentially retiring for a few years now, just for the simple fact of he's made enough money. We know that, he lives not a somewhat simple life, and they do have, it seems every year he's adding another kid to the mix, and you might want to start spending time with them. But we'll see. We're going to enjoy Kershaw as long as we can, and glad to see at least one more season of him so far this year. So.
Yep, absolutely. When we come back, we're going to talk about one pitcher who we won't see at the beginning of the season. In news that was a little bit surprising, we found out Evan Phillips' injury that kept him out of the World Series was a little bit more serious than we knew. We'll dig into that. So thanks for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen, and please keep it Locked On Dodgers. This episode is brought to you by Wonderful Pistachios. Looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling fuller longer. I love that you can choose no shells or in shell because every situation is different. When I'm sitting at my desk and I want a quick snack, the no shells variety is perfect. If I'm watching my son play baseball out in the fresh air, sometimes it's nice to crack my own shells. So the in shell options make me happy. Wonderful Pistachios is a complete protein, providing all 9 essential amino acids. These little green wonders pack a protein punch. No shells, Wonderful Pistachios is great for that grab and go ease, and there's not much better than the satisfying crack of opening each shell in the in-shell variety. So whether you're running between meetings or dropping off the kids, Wonderful Pistachios is the snack that works as hard as you do. Get snacking and get cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. Hey, we are back. Thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning or your last listen every evening. If you're with us live here on Tuesday evening, we appreciate that. Thanks for everydayers. If you're not an everydayer, it's easy to become one. Just watch or listen every weekday morning, and then voila, you are an everydayer. You can also become a Locked On Dodgers insider by going to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnDodgers, where you can have one-on-one text conversations with us, get our thoughts before the show, all that good stuff, and get access to a Locked On Dodgers Insiders Discord server where you can talk Dodgers with other Locked On Dodgers fans. For your second listen, be sure to check out Locked On MLB, hosted by our buddy Paul Francis Sullivan, a.k.a. Sully. Now that spring training is getting going, Sully will be back to 5 days a week if you are interested in a show that covers all of Major League Baseball. And remember, you can always check out Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Sports Los Angeles, the two 24/7 streaming channels on YouTube from the Locked On Podcast Network. All right, so Vince, Evan Phillips missed the World Series. It was kind of surprising. He pitched in the NLCS, and then when the Dodgers released their World Series roster, Evan Phillips wasn't on it. We found out that it was an unspecified arm injury. It was all that they really said. We found out on Tuesday it was something a little bit serious. It was a partially torn rotator cuff. He had a PRP injection, platelet-rich plasma injection in the shoulder in November, shortly after the World Series. Didn't pick up a baseball till January, and so we got word that he is unlikely to be ready to start the season. It got me wondering, Vince, if when Bob Nightingale reported a month ago that Michael Kopech was likely to miss the first month of the season, I wonder if he just got his Dodgers relievers wrong, because we've heard people say Kopech and the Dodgers front office said, we don't know where that report came from. Maybe he was thinking Evan Phillips and just said Michael Kopech instead.
Bob Nightingale would be the one guy that could mix up names, so that very plausible for sure. But yeah, I mean, for Phillips, it's interesting. We saw him pitch a big inning there in Game 6 of the NLCS, and then didn't see him again the rest of the year, and kind of came out of nowhere. And he kind of downplayed a little bit, I think, when people asked him about it in the World Series media day and stuff like that, and we just didn't know. It was just one of those where they didn't know how long it would take. It felt like they told us, we don't know how long it's going to take, so we're going to start him off the roster. And then, obviously, if he would have been healthy enough, they could have made some arrangements or movements if they really needed to. And then now we hear this, and another interesting thing, just because we haven't heard much about it or anything else. And I don't remember if he was at FanFest, but I know he was at some of the other Dodger events throughout that week, and didn't mention anything. But this is why you go out and get all the depth that you do acquire. And for Evan Phillips, I remember talking to him last year when he had the hamstring injury, and he had told me if it was the postseason, I'd be pitching right now. So for him to not be pitching in the World Series, that it was definitely something that was bothering him a lot more. In an article with Bill Plunkett, he kind of mentioned that, and kind of seeing how it sucked to see somebody going. He said, it sucks to kind of see somebody going out there in a spot that would have been yours, but the guys, all did their jobs and everything worked out. So hopefully it's, there is no further damage. It's just going to take them an extra month or so to get back with the team.
Yeah, and it's always scary to hear a torn anything, but, tears in these things it's pretty, like a sprained ankle is technically a torn ligament. That's the definition of a sprain, is a tear. And most sprained ankles don't require surgery. The ligament fixes itself. It grows back together. The human body is a magical thing, and the PRP injections are designed to help speed up that recovery. Obviously, Evan and the Dodgers medical team thought that was the best course of treatment, and no reason to think that it's not. So hopefully it will just be, a few weeks into the season, he's ready to go. And the one thing that was really clear is that the Dodgers obviously knew about this. And so us from the outside talking all offseason, wow, even though they have this stacked bullpen, they're still going out and signing guys, and how are they going to fit everybody in? When we always say, well, the answer is somebody's going to be hurt. The fact is somebody was already hurt. The Dodgers knew that. We didn't know that, and there may be more injuries that we don't yet know about. I saw Richie in the chat saying Dodgers not being fully transparent in player injuries. No, not the Dodgers. It's a running joke. I don't have any problem with the Dodgers not being fully transparent with injuries because I don't need to know it. And, there's no, now that spring training started, yeah, we do kind of need to know because otherwise it would be weird. Why isn't Evan Phillips pitching yet? What's going on? But in the moment, I don't necessarily need to know in real time all the injuries. I do think this is kind of interesting because it does open up a little bit more room in the bullpen, knowing that we are starting the season with one of the 7 high leverage relievers that the Dodgers have. At least one of them will be on the shelf to start the season, which means there is a little bit more room for, the young guys or the starters who don't make the rotation or whoever it is, a little bit more wiggle room for that bullpen.
That's what I was thinking about, the most is that this is kind of like, not in the player comparison, but more so in the comparison of the idea is like if Chris Taylor gets hurt or somebody, Miguel Rojas, Chris Taylor, like one of those guys got hurt, then you can find the runway for somebody else to get at the start of the season and then kind of figure out what you want to do from there. This kind of helps you out because, you're going to have Evan Phillips, or hopefully you're going to have him for the bulk of the season or the end of the season. But you can find some time, with guys like Destin May, who we talked about yesterday, who don't have options and would, have to either make the roster or not be on the roster. Now that maybe gives you a spot for someone like him or someone like, Bobby Miller to have a chance or more of a chance for, piggybacking. There's different things that can go about it this way. And I think it's one of those where damn, if guys could just be like, oh, I'm going to be hurt for a month at the start of the season, knowing that they're the guys that you want at the end of the season, and you can kind of clear the roster a little bit that way and figure things out. That'd be an ideal world. But the ideal world would be that they wouldn't be hurt. Evan Phillips was actually hurt and just started his entire winter a little bit later than normal. So, but yeah, this works out for the Dodgers, and this is why, like I said, why you build that depth.
Yeah, and if you ask any Dodger fan, would you rather have Evan Phillips in April or in October? The fact is he's very valuable, a very good pitcher when he's healthy. And so give me that in October. And like you said, this is a legitimate injury. This isn't, keep him, only make him pitch 6 months of the year, even though the season's going to last 7 months. It's not that, but, it could be a blessing in disguise. And we've seen that with other guys. I think Yamamoto last year is a good example of a guy who he missed 3 months of the regular season and then worked his way back up. And we weren't sure going into the postseason how it was going to work out. But then you saw by the end, he was a pretty dominant pitcher in the postseason. And some of that might have been because he had those 3 months off. And, maybe in a perfect world, he would have come back 2 weeks earlier in the regular season so that he could have, because his first start against the Padres was still, his first inning against the Padres was a clunker inning. But then after that in the postseason, he was really good. And so all these guys, I think we are going to see, I don't think we're going to see any relievers with, 70 games pitched this year. I think it's going to be, everybody, all these high leverage guys are going to be in the 50 to 55 game range. The starters, it's going to be, they all made 22 to 26 starts on the season. Nobody's going to be pitching a ton. And it's going to be some of this, IL stints or, the guys with options, they'll get optioned for a while. Who knows what it's going to be, but I think the Dodgers are kind of planning on playing that game, at least to some extent.
Yeah, every time I think about, the amount of pitchers the Dodgers run through, and I think about how, for whatever reason, and maybe this is just anti-90s Yankees bias, but Joe Torre, people would always go, wish we had Joe Torre as manager and blah, blah, and all this other stuff. Joe Torre would lose his mind doing what Dave Roberts has to do, going through all these. Joe Torre would use guys, 70, 80 times a year, and not worry about it and not think about anything else because those guys were normally healthy and normally were able to take the ball whenever it was. But nowadays it's a lot different ball game, and that's one other reason why like Dave Roberts fits what the Dodgers do and why he's such a good manager.
Yeah, absolutely. He definitely fits this, and I think he kind of enjoys the challenge of figuring out all these moving parts. It's a different challenge than any other manager in baseball faces, and I think he kind of relishes that. One pitcher who was injured last year and missed the postseason was Tyler Glasnow. We saw him throwing off a mound. That's first day of spring training today. And some people noticed some differences. We're going to dig into that. So thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen, and please keep it Locked On Dodgers. Hey, we are back. Thanks again for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen. Thanks for being every day, or thanks for being here with us live. Remember to go be on the podcast to become a Locked On Dodgers insider by going to joinsubtext.com/Locked On Dodgers. And be sure to check out Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Sports Los Angeles on YouTube. So pitchers and catchers, today, Tuesday, was the official first day of spring training. It's why the Dodgers made the Kike Hernandez move official, because the 60-day injured list opened up. All the things that come with that, including we got the hype videos of the players walking into Camelback Ranch. That's always fun. And we got to see guys throwing off a mound. We saw we saw Shohei Ohtani yesterday. We saw some Roki Sasaki. We saw Dustin May, a lot of guys. One of those was Tyler Glasnow. And Tyler Glasnow missed the last month or so of the season last year.
5-6 weeks.
Regular season, and then missed all of the postseason. He said recently it was tendonitis, no structural damage, and that he's feeling great. And he was thrown off the mound, and CJ Garcia on Twitter writes for Dodgers Beat. He was kind of pointing out that Tyler Glasnow's mechanics look a little bit different, a little bit more. I don't even know how to. I guess I'll read what he said. He's much more fluid in his mechanics and more efficient mechanically towards the plate. Perhaps this more momentum-based delivery could help him take some stress off his arm and incorporate his whole body. I guess the way I would describe it is it just looks less herky-jerky, a little bit less. It looks
less straight up.
Yeah, it looks less painful. It looks more like he is using all 9'12" of his frame to get that momentum going, and looks like he's probably falling off towards first base a little bit less, because his momentum is going more straight towards the plate. Could be interesting to see, A, if it takes some of the stress off his arm, and B, like if the stuff is any different, because when you change those mechanics, it's not crazy to think his fastball could tick up a mile an hour.
It looks, for what he said at FanFest, and kind of said you'll notice that it was hard for him to explain, but he did talk about finishing toward the plate and everything else, and you definitely see that. It definitely looks like he's less straight up, a little bit more of that. Well, I forget what the old school coaches used to say, but basically drop and go or whatever it was, like you're dropping that back leg and using that force to push you toward the plate, and the momentum base, like you mentioned. And it looks like that. Don't know for sure yet if this is something that he's doing right now to get him to a point where he wants to be, or this is what it's going to look like. But we'll have to wait and see. And for him at this point, we hated to put the injured label on him when the Dodgers traded for him last year. And, we talked ourselves into what he was telling us, where one injury it was the same injury, but it just got him twice because he didn't get it taken care of 100% the first time. And then last year, he gets hurt. It ends up being just tendonitis, and it kind of sucks. But, now it is one of those where, okay, well, how much can he actually give you? How much can he actually throw? Can he go a full season? And we don't know the answers to that. But the fact that he's working on things to try and figure that out is, obviously great to see and hear about. And, with the Dodgers and everything else, I'm sure they put either different things on the board, new technologies, new people in the building, whatever it is. Friedman said that they're looking at why there's been so many injuries for them lately. And, this could be one of those things where they found a different way of approaching a windup or a different way of approaching throwing the baseball for certain players that still matches. They're not going to reinvent the wheel, but they are going to make little tweaks here and there.
It kind of reminded me a little bit of Yamamoto. Like, have you ever been at the airport and they've got those little moving walkways and, like Jim Carrey, it feels like you're moving at an incredible rate of speed. Like Yamamoto, when he's pitching, it almost looks like he's on one of those walkways, like the way his whole body is shifting. And it's like, it seems like he's 5 feet down the mound by the time he's finishing his delivery. I felt like I saw a little bit of that in Glasnow, that same kind of get that momentum going. And obviously Glasnow and Yamamoto could not possibly be built more differently. Yamamoto, kind of needs that momentum because he's 5'10", something like that. Glasnow is a full, probably 10 inches taller than Yamamoto. But if he can use that same kind of mechanism to get that momentum going, could be really, really interesting. And it's worth noting that last year, even though Glasnow did get hurt, missed the rest of the season, he still set career highs in starts and innings pitched. And so it was a step forward for him health-wise. 134 innings pitched, probably not quite where we want him. 22 starts last year. But if he could give us 25 starts at 150 innings, I'd be totally fine with that if he's ready to then throw another 25 innings in October. I'd actually be fine with 134 innings again if he's ready to give us 25 good innings in October. It's all about being healthy at the right times. And that's so much of I feel like that's going to be the theme of this season is who's going to be healthy in October, because the Dodgers have built a super roster to the point where fans of other teams are crying like little crying crybabies. But ultimately, it's going to come down to who's healthy in October. And if they get all the right guys healthy, they could steamroll everybody in October. Last year, they didn't have everybody healthy on the pitching side. They did on the offensive side, pretty much. Miguel Rojas was hurt, but for the most part, all their stars were healthy. And for the most part, all the stars contributed. The pitching wasn't, though. And on the pitching side, they've got, realistically, there are 8 guys right now who could be in the Dodgers postseason starting rotation in their top 4 in October. And obviously, if we had to pick 4, there's some who are higher tier than others. But I think the goal for the Dodgers was, let's not get to the point where we have I think the Dodgers never want to do a bullpen game in October ever again. And I think that is a worthy goal, one that I wholeheartedly endorse. And that seems to have been their approach this offseason was, all right, what can we do to make sure we never have to do that again?
Yeah, and it's hard to really prep against that because people say, oh, they have to manage their innings better and everything else and blah blah blah. Well, Yamamoto got hurt and he was 74 innings in. Like, how do you know when somebody's going to get hurt? You don't know that. Obviously, the more innings they throw, the more opportunity they have to get hurt, but you don't know when it's going to happen, how it's going to happen, and everything else. And there's no science to, okay, if we hold this guy, in the middle of the season, we hold him back a month, and then we, ease him in and have, strict pitch counts for the next month, and then, blah, 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 whatever. He could still get hurt in one of those outings or one of those innings. So the way the Dodgers are going to try to combat this right now is obviously little tweaks here and there where they see things and, probably finding, like I said, new technologies and new people in the building and new eyeballs on it and building depth. And they've always had that depth, but this year the depth feels a little bit different because you're starting from such a high point. Like, they've always had at least 2 good starting pitchers. It's usually Kershaw and somebody else. Maybe, extended to 3, Kershaw and, back in the days in Ryu and somebody else, or Kershaw, Greinke, somebody else. But they've never had like a legitimate start. Like, that was starting 4 right now, where all 4 of those guys could be number 1s to start the season. That's not counting Shohei Ohtani, and that's not counting, Clayton Kershaw eventually, who at this point probably wouldn't be a number 1 anyways, but still like has the ability to be very, very good and was an all-star in 2023. So it's one of those where they're battling it from all sides. One of those sides is the depth. One of those sides is, making tweaks and finding different things out. But there's really no answer to kind of figure out injury-wise. And if there is I would expect the Dodgers to find it before anybody else.
Absolutely. You're talking about these previous Dodger teams. I was thinking about 2015. Do you remember who the Dodgers number 3 starter was behind Kershaw and Greinke in 2015?
No.
Brett Anderson. And Brett Anderson was fine. He pitched 180 innings, had a 3.69 ERA. So he was like, twice, only half as good as Kershaw and Greinke, but solid. They had one other guy that year who threw 100 innings. Any guesses? I'll give you a hint. He later tried to sue the Astros for cheating.
What was his name? Bolsinger?
Mike Bolsinger. Yeah, that's the only guys they had over 100 innings pitched that year. Dodgers won the division. Like over the years, they have, like you said, they have taken a couple good pitchers and managed to have really good teams. But I think that's part of why the postseason success hasn't been quite what they had hoped for some of these years, was because they didn't have these guys. And when you only have two elite starters, if one of them flounders in the postseason, you're out of luck. And the Dodgers in 2024, I think there was some luck involved that Yamamoto did get ready in time. Walker Buehler did find things at the right time, and the bullpen did perform in those bullpen games for the most part. But what we see now is a team full of pitchers who, quality-wise, it's one of the best probably the best pitching staff the Dodgers have had during this 12-year run, 13-year run, whatever it is. And the question is going to come down to quantity, health. Can they? How long can they be good for, and which months can they be awesome for?
Yeah, and that's why it's a great time to be a Dodger fan right now.
Yep, absolutely. You got anything else for today?
Nothing else. No.
Yeah, it was a fun first day of spring training. Always fun to start getting videos rolling in, getting more pictures of all the guys in their uniforms. It was fun. Did you see the video of the guys taking grounders at short and Miguel Rojas chanting "Let's go Dodgers" and stuff? Like, Miggy is happy to be back. You could tell that. And it's going to be fun. So Mookie Betts had some interesting comments about staying focused, not thinking too much about last year's World Series. We'll probably dig into that some more tomorrow, and probably get more spring training news, because now that spring training stuff starts happening. So we will be back tomorrow, because tomorrow is a weekday, and we are here every weekday because we love talking Dodgers with you. So thank you for being an everydayer. If you're not an everydayer, become one by watching and listening every weekday morning. Thanks for being here with us live this evening. A lot of fun in the chat, a lot of predictions. I saw Seth predicted Dodgers to go 162-0 and then go 11-0 in the postseason. Both of those would be records, so I'm on board with that. Be sure to check out Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Sports Los Angeles, the two 24/7 streaming channels on YouTube from the Locked On Podcast Network. Remember, you can go beyond the podcast and become a Locked On Dodgers insider by going to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnDodgers. You can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at Locked On Dodgers. Vince is on Twitter at VinceSense91. I'm on Twitter at Snydog, and both of our DMs are open there. You can also email us at lockedondodgers@gmail.com, or send us a voicemail or a text message at 323-863-LOCK-5625. We are here every weekday morning, and we hope you'll be here with us. When you get in your car or sit on your couch, tell your smart device to play podcast Locked On Dodgers. And remember, you don't have to agree. You just have to listen. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
Have a good one.